Grace and peace, family. I'm Dr. Brandon McCrae, and welcome to another edition of Wisdom on Wednesday. We've been exploring this concept and construct of worship, and it is centered around the story of David recovering the ark in 2 Samuel chapter 6, verses 5 through 15. Now, later on in the series, we'll be examining that text more critically, but we are setting the stage for what it is our conversation is in worship. Last week, I spoke to you about worship being an identity, an experience, and an expression. Today, I'd like to continue on that building block and continue to build the foundation for our later discussion. There's one thing I want you to know. If you don't remember anything else that we speak about today, I want you to know this. Take a note. Worship flows from the person and the work of God. It is extremely important that we build this foundation and this knowledge base so that when we continue our conversation on worship, that we are all together in and on the same page. Number one, worship begins with a reflection on who God is rather than a reflection on ourselves. Scripture then becomes our primary source and our foundation of discovering God's idea and ideas of what worship is to entail. Worship, family, is grounded in God. Worship itself is a selfless act. So worship begins with our reflection, number one, on who God is. Number two, worship that is grounded in God acknowledges that God initiates worship. Now, here's a key fact and facet of the conversation. God initiates worship. It is not what we do. It is not what we say. It is not what we become accustomed to, but it is God himself that initiates worship. Worship is an invitation. Listen, not an invention. God invites us to worship, and effective worship is never a result of our efforts, but it is a response to God's actions. God invites us to worship, and as we respond to that invitation, we engage him in that said worship. Worship happens when we learn, family, to say yes to the ever-increasing ways that God's invitation to encounter him comes to us in. So number one, it is worship begins with a reflection on who God is. Number two, worship that is grounded in God acknowledges that God initiates worship. Lastly, worship grounded in God is an eternal enterprise. As a matter of fact, worship was always in place. Worship is continually in place. And worship, according to John's revelation in Revelation, will forever be at work. Worship was at work long before the worlds were made and will continue throughout eternity. Lastly, as I leave, as we're closing today's session, take this note with you. Though we may be called to work, we were created to worship. This has been your boy Brandon McCrae, aka BmacMusik. Do three things for us. Like, share, and comment on this post because we want to make something God go viral. And until next time, I want to see your face in the same space for Wisdom on Wednesday. Listen, I'll let you, boy.